Okay, Tom, welcome back to Kegel Training Center. You've been here for your lesson today. We worked out this morning. We focused on one area primarily, um, and now we're going to review real quickly what we talked about, and then I'll try to recap some of the other conversations that we had just to kind of keep you as a reminder. Um, we took a look first off. Let's start with where you were before you got here, meaning where you were last time. This was you back in 2010. So you can see where the biggest thing that we focused on was just your release. We talked a lot about you feel like when you do lose or you're not winning competitions, a lot of it has to do with just you're not able to create as much power as some of the other guys that are around you. So, which looking at your game, you definitely are a little bit more old school in your ball motion. You're definitely not the most skid flippy on the planet as far as what you're able to create. So. We started to take a look at your release. This is what you were at before you came in here, and I think last time you'd said that this was part of one of the things that you focused on a little bit last time too. So you can see in general what we want to see is we want to see the fingers is lower down on the ball and more behind the ball. This was you before. Did a tiny bit of unload, but it wasn't very much. It was good for somebody that grew up in the age that definitely never ever did that. And then this was you today. So you can see in general you're a little bit more behind the ball, so you've gotten a little better. You've improved a little bit since last time. You're still unloading a little bit, so it wasn't bad, but we're going to try to create a little bit more power, so we're going to even unload even a little bit more than that. The two guys that we used for examples here is Jason Sterner, which was one of the guys that you had mentioned is one of the guys that beat you up pretty good sometimes, because I know he bowls a lot of tournaments in your area. And then Sean Rash, both definitely power players. Are you ever going to be a power player exactly like them? Absolutely not, but we can take some of their power player dimensions and help you understand what makes them power players so that you can do more of that. And that's exactly what we're doing. So there's two things that we the first thing we focused on was just doing a little bit more load so that when you unloaded, it was more of an unload. So you can see these guys here, there's a lot more unload. Jason definitely unloads more than you, but then Sean unloads even more than him. So after working on that a little bit, you can see how much more you're unloading in on this one. So this was your before. So there's a little bit of unload there. Now, even more unload. So you can see there's a little bit more wrist bend, a little bit more unload. Now the other thing that we focused on a little bit after that was there's two other things that we kind of worked on to help this a little bit. Was one, making sure that we get the wrist in a little bit, meaning the fingers are pointed more this direction. So if you look at the way Sean's is right here, they've got him and Jason both have their fingers pointed so much that you can actually see that their wrist is bent and pointing to the left a little bit. So in comparison to what you were doing with almost no wrist bend, and then here you've got a little bit more wrist bend. And then lastly, to combine with it, the other thing that always helps with rev rate, if you don't have rev rate, the other way you've got to make your motion increase a little bit is creating a little bit more rotation. One of the things that we focused, or the main thing we focused on for that, was to look at where your thumb is at and trying to get the thumb outside the fingers a little bit. If you look at where Sean's is coming down, he's got the fingers more on this side of the ball, and he doesn't keep them there as long as what you would expect to be, but having them in there like that. One of the examples that I'd given you about that was Pete Weber. That's one of the reasons why he always uses so much rotation, is he gets his fingers out and almost gets, with him, the ball almost gets on top of his hand. But when you rotate your fingers out that way and keep your hand in, well, when you get to the bottom of the swing, the hand has to come around the ball, so you create a little bit more rotation doing it. So the keys to it is I want you to get a little bit more loaded so that you can unload more. And then in combination with that is to make sure that the fingers are pointed out to the left so the wrist is bent a little bit. And then also try to get a little bit more around the ball. So try to let your thumb come out a little bit so that your hand wants to rotate around so you can increase your rotation. I'm going to remind you too about some of the other conversations we had as far as lane play in general tournament situations. Remember, as the day goes on, the skid flippier look becomes important. So even though you may be using more of a controlled down and in look, a little bit more control to start the day and to get there, as the day goes on, you're going to have to use more and more motion. And the example that we had here is we were bowling with the Anaconda and the High Road. The Anaconda you felt like was the better look, and where you thought you would have been at, I had you switch to the High Road, you threw 5 in a row. The primary difference was because A, the lane was starting to ask a little bit more for a little bit more skid flippy, and that's what I would prefer to see to carry the pins down better, because you're going to have a little bit more entry angle. Entry angle, everything else being equal, more entry angle means more pin carry. You were able to get about a half a degree more with the High Road than you were with the Anaconda. Now, yes, you could hit the pocket with both of them, but the Anaconda, yeah, when you missed, you didn't miss as much, so you didn't give the pocket away. So you could go double spare, double spare, double spare. Well, double spare across the sheet is probably going to be about 220-ish. With our High Road, even if we do throw a 2-8-10 in there every once in a while, you go 5-bagger, 2-8-10, 5-bagger, you're looking at 240, 250. So even though you felt like you were making the smarter choice of the two, it wasn't always the best thing. So I want to challenge you when you're in your tournament situation to really ask yourself, is this the best scoring potential that I have? It may mess you up in a couple tournaments to where you make just the totally wrong choice, but the only way you're going to get better at it is to keep focusing on it. I really like how hard you work on your game. You're able to make these changes quickly. And I think you're going to have a lot of success when you continue in your tournaments. You may go through a 6 or 8 week stint that as you're trying to retrain this frame of mind a little bit, that it will run into some issues, but I think you'll learn quickly from it and go with it. Also, don't forget to look around you and figure out what other guys are doing that's helping with it. So I think all in all, that pretty much recaps what we talked about today. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me, and thanks for coming in again.